Malfoy, Draco Malfoy by Talipatra from fanfiction.net. Chapter 1. A Chance Encounter. I looked around the room, my heart pounding in my chest. Everything looked like it was going well, so I should, theoretically, be able to relax. This was not happening, though. There was still so much that could go wrong. The minister and his wife could slip on the stairs as they came to join the rest of the crowd. The musicians could miss their cues. The hot food could get cold, and the cold food could get hot. Oh my goodness, just thinking about everything made my breathing quicken. Relax, Hermione, murmured Henry, my boss, as he slipped beside me. Everything's going swimmingly. I smiled at him, but didn't relax. My job isn't to relax, Henry, I reminded him. My job is to ensure that everyone is enjoying themselves. Well, you failed at the enjoying part of it. You look miserable standing over here. I sighed and closed my eyes, going to a calm place inside of me to try to relax. I took a couple of deep breaths and then opened my eyes. I felt slightly less tense than I had before. Henry was laughing at me now. You're very capable at your job, Hermione. Never forget that. But you also need to enjoy being young. I am 27, Henry, I reminded him. Some would hardly call that young. I consider anything under 35 young, he said with a laugh. Besides, you're not married, you don't have children, you can still be young. I forced a smile. True. We turned to watch the party in front of us. Everyone really did seem as if they were having a wonderful time. The snow outside the tall windows reminded me of Hogwarts in a way, and added a general festiveness to the gathering. Finally, the music signaling entrance of the new minister's wife started. Henry smiled at me and stepped forward. I followed at a distance, as was my position, and we watched. I'd put a non-slip spell on the marble stairs earlier, but was still relieved when they made it all the way down without problems. The minister smiled at the crowd, but he beamed at his wife. I felt a little pang in my chest as he lovingly slipped his hand onto her waist and started to twirl her around the dance floor. I missed Ron. But before I had a chance to really dwell on that and start feeling sorry for myself, Henry turned to me, bowed, and held out his hand. May I have this dance? He beamed up at me. I laughed and took his hand, allowing him to lead me out onto the dance floor. Henry was the best boss I could have hoped for. He was about my father's age and treated me as though I was his daughter, something I greatly appreciated. He beamed down at me like a proud father as we twirled around the floor. I smiled and nodded at everyone who I made eye contact. Being a diplomatic assistant was something I could continue with. I really did enjoy the people aspect of it. On one turn, I caught sight of a platinum blonde head towering above the rest. I frowned and searched the crowd on the next turn, to find it again. Is everything all right? Asked Henry with a bemused look on his face as the dance ended and I looked past him, trying to find the blonde again. It's, fine. I just thought I saw someone I knew. You probably know half the people here, Hermione. I smiled. True, I just meant someone I knew before the war. Someone from school. Oh, well, by all means, go find her. I smiled again and curtsied before exiting the dance floor in the direction of the last place I'd seen the blonde. I spotted him again, weaving through the crowds, nodding at people as he passed them. I frowned, frustrated that he had his back to me and I couldn't see his face. I didn't want to shout his name across the crowded room. That would be incredibly inappropriate. I rudely ignored the people who touched my arm in an attempt to talk to me as I struggled through the crowds. The huge bustling skirt was beautiful on and yet incredibly cumbersome when trying to chase someone through a crowd. I pulled my wand out and muttered a bustling spell, feeling the weight of my skirt shift slightly and at the same time free up my movement. The blonde stepped out onto the balcony and I followed him. There were much fewer people out here due to the snow and the cold temperature. He spoke briefly to a man who then disappeared inside. I shivered as I stepped onto the balcony through a different door. The blonde stood at the other end from me. He was holding something in his hand. I could only see his profile, but it was enough. Malfoy? His head shot up, startled. He stared at me in shock, his mouth open, and I swear he was forming the word Granger. I'm sorry, he said instead. I started towards him. Draco Malfoy. He frowned, his face clearly showing confusion. I'm afraid I don't know who you're talking about. I'm James Zather. I stared at him. No, you're not. You're Draco Malfoy. I went to school with you for 6 years. You tormented me mercilessly. I'd know you anywhere. I'm sorry, you're mistaken. He walked away from me quickly, and I started after him. In spite of my skirt being bustled, it still slowed me down. He was able to move much more quickly in his tailored tuxedo. His long legs were carrying him very quickly away from me, so I did the only thing I could think of to stop him. I pulled off a shoe and heaved it at him, neatly clipping him in the back of the head. He stopped and turned, stunned on his face. "What the?" He stared at me. "What was that for?" I put my hands on my hips. "You are Draco Malfoy, and for whatever reason, you won't admit it, or that you know me." He started towards me. "I told you, I'm James Zapp, and I don't know you. Now leave me alone, Granger." His face was dark, and he looked angry, but I grinned triumphantly. "I never told you my name." His jaw dropped, and he realized his mistake. He swore under his breath, then grabbed my arm and started to drag me after him in the direction he'd been going when I threw my shoe. He stuck out his hand and muttered something, my shoe flying into his hand. He tucked it into his pocket and glared down at me. "When will you learn to keep your nose in your own damn business, Granger?" he growled as he pulled me along. "You almost ruined everything by calling me by name." "Ruined what?" I demanded, trying to dig in my heels and stop. It was difficult, since I only had on one shoe and we were walking on marble. "Nothing," he muttered, looking around almost frantically. Suddenly, a green burst of light flew past us. He swore and pulled me against him, parading away. I stumbled as he released me when we arrived, wherever it was that we were. I looked around as I tried to regain my bearings. "Where are we?" "In a shit ton of trouble," he grumbled, striding across the room to a small bed. We looked to be in a Muggle hotel room, something incredibly fancy. I'd expect nothing less from Draco Malfoy. He threw something at me, and I caught it. It was a pair of brown trousers and a large cream-colored sweater. I stared at it and then looked up at him. "What am I supposed to do with these?" "Put them on." He sounded irritated. "We've only got a few minutes before they get here, and we've got to clear out before then." "Who's they?" "Put them on," he ordered. I scowled at him, but turned my back. I waved my wand over myself, undoing the fastenings on the dress, and slipped out of it carefully. I pulled on the pants and sweater, and was practically swimming in them. Malfoy wordlessly handed me my other shoe, and I slipped it on, waving my wand a few more times and making the pants and sweater fit me, and shrinking my dress down so that it would fold up and fit in my still large pockets. I'd spent a fortune on it. I wasn't about to leave it behind in some random hotel room. I turned and studied Malfoy. He'd changed into black trousers and a blue sweater that made his eyes look blue. Funny, I'd always thought they were gray. He pulled on a big black overcoat and had switched from dress shoes to some that looked a bit more useful for traveling. He was stuffing a few things into a small bag. He must have put an expanding style on it, because while I watched, he clearly put more in there than would normally fit. I walked over and wordlessly handed him my dress. He gave me a look, and I narrowed my eyes at him. "I'm not leaving it." He scowled and shoved it in with everything else. "Come on, we have to go." "Go where?" "London." "Are we fluing?" He snorted. "No, they'll be watching the Flu Network. We've got to do it the Muggle way." I stared at him. "What do you know about Muggles?" "More than you realize." He started towards the door and paused, looking back at me. "I'm sorry to drag you into this, but it's for your own safety. They saw you with me, and they'll be after you. They probably think you're someone I care about." I narrowed my eyes at him. "I'm perfectly capable of taking care of myself, thank you. I did manage to make it through quite a bit in the past without your help." "Not this, Granger." His tone of voice scared me a little. I sighed. "Do I at least get to know who we're running from, or why?" "Not now. For now, we just need to move." I nodded and followed him out the door. We were in a Muggle hotel for sure. There was a feeling of normalcy to it. No slight underlying vibe of magic that I had learned to recognize at strictly magical places. Our footsteps were muted by the thick carpet underfoot as we walked towards the lift at the end of the hall. Malfoy pushed the down button, and we waited in the silent moments for the golden doors to slide open. He stepped in and pushed the button for the first floor. I stepped a little closer to him out of habit. I had recently developed an irrational hatred of small enclosed spaces since the war. It didn't really make sense. It was just a late development of all the stress I'd gone through in 7 years. He looked at me curiously, and I flushed, stepping away. Normally it was Ron, or Harry, or Henry, or sometimes Ginny if she could get out of the house. Normally I'd really just begun to avoid lifts completely. We rode in silence when we reached the first floor. Malfoy pulled me out through the huge double doors and into the blizzard-like weather. I shivered as the cold blast of air hit me, sending goosebumps up and down my body. I reached for my wand, but Malfoy put his hand on my arm. No magic until we're safe. None? I asked with surprise. None. He shrugged out of his overcoat and draped it over my shoulders. If anyone asks, I'm James Zather. You are now Millie Zather. We're on our honeymoon. Millie? What name would you prefer? I shrugged. Probably something that doesn't remind me of Slytherin. He rolled his eyes. Lavender? I punched him lightly on the shoulder. Or my boyfriend's exes? He raised his eyebrows. Oh, so you're the weasel then? Not married, I see. I'll be Emma. I faced away from him. I was not going to discuss Ron with Draco Malfoy. Right. Emma and James. Simple enough. I nodded and stared straight ahead. The mention of Ron started pulling my chest to ache. I wrapped my arms around myself and shivered again. My hair was still pinned up and my neck was freezing. Malfoy reached over wordlessly and placed a large, warm hand on the back of my neck. I sighed softly and stepped closer to him. Why are we standing here? We're going to catch a cab. I nodded and shivered again. Where are we going? London. In a cab? The look he gave me a look and I raised my eyebrow at him. I'm hoping to get to the train station. They won't look for us there. Why not? Would you look for us there? Depends on why I was looking for you in the first place. They won't think to check there first. They'll check the flue. Then they'll try to track the apparating wizards. By the time they realize we've gone muggle, we'll be on our way. We'll have to change modes in Germany, I'm sure, but as long as we stay at least one step ahead, we'll be fine. I was completely confused, but before I had a chance to ask any more questions, he was ushering me into a cab. He gave the drivers instructions for the train station in flawless Russian. I raised my eyebrows at him, but I didn't see it in the darkness of the cab. A terrifying 20 minutes later, we arrived at the train station. Malfoy strode purposely to the tickets counter, and I started for the lone shop in the place. They were selling coats, so I quickly bought one for myself, along with scarves and hats for the both of us, and a pair of gloves and shoes and socks for myself. With no idea what size glove Malfoy would need, I opted to let him be. Luckily, I'd managed to keep my purse on me in the mad dash away from Winter Palace. I paid my purchases over to the bench where Malfoy was now sitting. He raised an eyebrow at me as I settled beside him. I dug into the bag and pulled out the socks and shoes, slipping out of my heels and getting into them with a grateful sigh. He shook his head as I handed him his coat and pulled on my new one. I made a face at him as I handed him the scarf and gloves. Red, Granger, trying to turn me Gryffindor? Red is a color that will suit you very well, Malfoy, and aren't we pretending to be normal? Call me Emma. He scowled at me and wrapped the red scarf around his neck while I wrapped the blue one around my head. My hair was still pretty, so I didn't really want to mess it up with the hat. Vanity, thy name is Hermione. Or, Emma. I scrunched down in my seat. So, where are we heading, James? He grinned at my use of his cover name. Well, either Italy, France, Poland, or somewhere east of here in Russia. He held up a handful of tickets to throw them off when they finally catch up to us. Won't they know we'll be heading to London? But by which route? He tapped the tickets and grinned at me. I also got on the phone and bought plane tickets. I shook my head. I still think apparating would have been quicker. Maybe, but not safer. This made no sense to me, but Malfoy wasn't in a mood to discuss anything. It also made no sense to me why I was going along with any of this. I should be trying to get the hell away from him, but something in his tone of voice made me believe him. Someone was after him, and would come after me now that he'd been seen with me. We boarded the train and took a small compartment which was empty. Malfoy stretched across the bench seat, leaving me the other, and promptly fell asleep. I fought it for as long as I could, but gradually the rocking got to me too, and I drifted off to a dreamy sleep.